Hello again. It really does seem to me sometimes as though I'm the only person whose eyes and mouth are both open. By which I mean that I see what is going on in Britain and talk freely about it. Perhaps that sounds boastful and I'm suffering delusions of grandeur. After all, a dispassionate observer might with some justice observe that when all's said and done, I'm just another tuppenny halfpenny YouTuber. This is, of course, also true. But even so, I can't help but notice that very few people speak plainly about what is actually happening in this country and say what every normal person thinks but is worried about saying out loud. Not that I blame people, really. After all, I'm about 109 years old and have no job to lose or reputation to suffer. Everybody thinks I'm a crackpot already, so a few more disapproving opinions don't really mean all that much to me. Enough of this rambling. The other day I posted a clip from YouTube which showed hundreds of young people of Caribbean origin running riot in the West End of London. They were looting shops, vandalising cars and assaulting passers-by. And although there were police officers present, they did not intervene. By the usual dictionary definition of a riot, that is to say a violent disturbance of the peace by a crowd, this was certainly a riot. Having got away with such disorder, and even filmed themselves doing so on their mobile telephones and then putting the footage up on social media sites, it was, I suppose, inevitable that others should follow their example. This is where things get interesting. The riot in Oxford Street was not reported in the newspapers, and nor was it mentioned on the television news. It was felt better to keep quiet about it. Whether this was because all the participants were black or for some other reason, I really could not say, but there it was, complete silence. On Sunday, something rather similar occurred in the English city of Nottingham. On this occasion, 50 youths swarmed into the local McDonald's, vaulted over the counter and began stealing whatever took their fancy. The staff were threatened and they retreated to let the youths help themselves. Just as with the riot in London, one of those taking part filmed the whole thing and put the video on Twitter. I give a link to it in the description to this video. The only report in the news about this comes from a local website for Nottingham, and I give a link to that too in the description to this video. Was this a riot? Am I exaggerating? Well, was it a violent disturbance of the peace by a crowd? Was there looting? Yes? Then it was a riot. 2 points are worth considering. The first is that the police, of course, did not attend until the affair had subsided, and they made no arrests. I suppose if they had turned up in the middle of it, they would most likely have taken the knee and let the youths get on with it, assuming it to be a Black Lives Matter protest. The second point is that nowhere in the report to which I give a link is there any mention of the ethnicity of the participants. This is odd because it is surely relevant to the crime. I wonder if any viewers can imagine a crowd of unruly Hindus carrying on in this way, with young women wearing saris jumping over the counter and stealing cheeseburgers and chips. What about Chinese people? No? Can anybody visualise that scene? Not really. This is a sociological phenomenon, and the ethnic origins of the rioters are certainly relevant. After all, this was an organised event, just like the one in the West End of London. These are people who are, in effect, arranging to launch attacks on civil society. Why are they doing this? Should we bother to try and find out? Their social origins, class, ethnic origins, age, are all important in trying to work out what is going on here. Less than a month ago, On July the 28th, a 9-year-old girl was stabbed to death in Lincolnshire. I have already remarked that this was an absolutely unheard of crime. A little girl being stabbed to death in this way. It will be recalled that the child was Lithuanian, as was the man who has been charged with her murder. Now, a few weeks later, another 9-year-old girl dies violently in England, this time in Liverpool. Yesterday evening, a 9-year-old girl was shot dead in the Knotty Ash area of Liverpool. I have never in my life heard of a 9-year-old girl being killed by gunfire in this country. It is even rarer than a child of that age being stabbed to death. I may, of course, be quite wrong about this, but I am pretty sure that those involved in this ghastly tragedy will not have ordinary English names like Dave Smith or Jim Jones. What we are seeing is the collapse of civilised society in Britain, and every day brings new evidence for this process. Can any viewer honestly claim to remember a time when little girls were being shot or stabbed to death in this country? Are organised looting expeditions a new feature of life in Britain? As I say, it seems that nobody else is saying out loud what so many of us think after witnessing these terrible events. Even the newspapers and television avoid discussing plainly what is now going on. The disintegration of our way of life is of course accelerating, and we shall see more outbreaks of looting and more deaths of little girls, until perhaps somebody will be prompted to try and put a stop to it.